This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by our great friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee, terrific service department, quick lane inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Joined now by the truly outstanding young broadcast talents out there, and that is, by my money, the best hockey announcer in the country, and that is Brian Tripp. My friend, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Steve, great to be with you. Thanks for the kind words, and it's funny that I heard from you today. I just actually was someone was asking me some questions for a story that's coming out, and they're asking me about you, and I said, well, I've learned a lot from Steve, and I said, I've learned basically what not to do. But no, great to hear from my friend.
I do set that kind of example in tone, don't I? Well, don't do it that way. So, this team, as I said at the end of the game on Saturday at the Jordan Center, I said, look, this is the hottest college hockey team in the country coming up tonight. And they played Minnesota. What changed for this team where suddenly the connectivity came together and it kicked it to another gear?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that word connectivity. I think the players on the team really embraced their roles. And part of it was because of the health of Arseny Sergeyev, their outstanding goaltender, who I believe is as great of a goaltender as this program's ever had and has played as well as any goaltender in the country in the second half of the year. He got hurt in mid-November, and once he came back, when the calendar turned to 2025, the way the team evolved along with his health allowed them to make that big stride. So when you talk about roles, the players who are counted on to score goals, and Guy, as you know, Steve, always wants to roll 4 lines and 3 defensive pairings. He feels like to play their style, their identity, they have to be able to do that. And they typically get production from each of those 4 lines and 3 defensive pairings. But this year, the word production doesn't necessarily mean it has to be goals, assists, and points. They've had 2 lines. Reese Lawback with Aiden Fink, who's up for the Hobey Baker this year, has 47 points on the season, is outstanding, and Danny Geniev as the top line, or 1A, and then Matt DeMarsico with Charlie Serrato and J.J. Weebush, who had a huge weekend this weekend. Those are the 2 lines that they count on for a lot of their scoring. And then I think it's the evolution of their bottom 6. Players like Keaton Peters, a freshman, Dane Dowiak, a sophomore, who's filled vital roles up and down the lineup. He can do anything that they ask of him. Senior Tyler Paquette, Carson Dick, who's an alternate captain, and another senior. Those guys really embracing the challenge of being a checking line, an identity line, and taking hold of those roles. I think the players, not only the guys who score, but then those other guys on the team really embracing those roles, and that connectivity of the team has what's allowed them to really take that next step.
I want to ask you about Serrato for a moment. In watching him play, he's a guy that has great natural talent, but as a young player seems to know how to play. What kind of impact player has he become?
Yeah, I think, again, you're right on point there, Steve. He's obviously as gifted. I think he could be as gifted a player that this team's ever recruited. He's a player who could get drafted this summer. It'll be his 3rd year of draft eligibility. He's got natural skill, natural talent, but he's got a persona to him, and I know this is what you're alluding to there. He's got a bit of an edge to him, and he plays the game hard, but he's got an infectious personality that if you're on his team, you love him. If you're on the other team, he has an edge that he just knows how to get after the game and make a difference, because it's not only how he plays, but the way he plays it. And I think that it's not just him. There's some other young players this year. I think the goalie, Arseny Sergeyev, with his competitive fire. But there's a couple of guys who have added kind of that spark, that jolt that they've been missing the last couple of years, that edge. And I think Charlie's a big catalyst for that, even at just 19 years old as a freshman. And that's something that I know Guy and the coaching staff really sought out during the recruiting process, someone that not only was really, really talented, but knew how to play the game, get under an opponent's skin, always know how to be around the net, make those plays, and then also make the plays where, it's things that don't show up in a box score that really are a difference. He's been great on face-offs. Just so many little elements to his game on the ice and then how he conducts himself that I think is a big difference maker for him.
All right, so I want to talk about Fink for a moment, because he's up for the Hobie Baker Award. He's just a great talent. What has made him, because Aiden's just a sophomore. I mean, what has made him a top-line player that is a difference maker? Because, last year he was a Big Ten Freshman of the Year finalist.
Yeah, let's start with, I think you always need your best players, and this is what all good teams have. Your best players are also your hardest workers. I know we've talked about it so much with football and Abdul Carter this past year, and talked about it in the past with a guy like Saquon Barkley. But Aiden Fink has come in and just worked his tail off from day one. Everyone knew he was the Canadian Junior Hockey Player of the Year 3 years ago, and everyone knew that he had an elite scoring ability. But, man, he gives 120% at both ends of the ice. His ability to back check, break plays up. And when you have a guy who's as skilled and gifted, a natural shooter, scorer, creative, his ability to play with the puck and what he can do to win pucks and get pucks, when you have a guy that is that skilled but also plays with the speed, tenacity, and the effort and energy that a guy like Aiden Fink does, I think that's what makes him such a great player. And then when he has the puck on his stick, he can pick a spot. He's a difference maker wherever he is on the ice. And I think in the college game, there's only certain players that we've seen through the years that when you're really that elite, every time they're on the ice, you know they are on the ice. And every time he's out there, you know he's on the ice because he's flying around. He's not the biggest guy, but he can really move. He's creative, and he's not afraid, even though he's not the biggest guy, he's not afraid to go in and do the dirty work, go into the boards, win battles, and find a way to hunt pucks and come up with pucks at both ends of the ice. So knew he was going to be an offensive talent. I'm not sure what the coaching staff knew, but for me it's been a pleasant surprise to see his attitude, how hard he works, and then what he does at both ends of the ice. And Guy always says that if you're going to be rewarded offensively, you have to do it on the defensive end, and he truly believes that this is truly a guy that drives the entire team.
All right. But people, I'm sure, know hockey. He was a 7th-round pick of the Nashville Predators, so he's somebody that the NHL guys looked at right away when he was younger and said, you know what, we think he's a player. Well, he's showing that now at the Penn State level. The fact they have to play at Michigan, they're right now, if I've got this right, I think they're 14th in the pairwise, because I think didn't Arizona State lost, and so Penn State went from 15 to 14.
Yep.
All right. So 14. For everybody out there, Brian, it doesn't matter where the ranking is on the promotional list. They're playing at number 1 Michigan State, number 2 Minnesota just came in. Those rankings are meaningless. Pairwise means everything.
Yeah, so the pairwise mimics the NCAA selection criteria formula. So statistically in college hockey, kind of like the old BCS, you know exactly where you stand. So Penn State, if you're in the top 16, you give yourself a chance to reach the field. That said, each conference tournament champion receives an automatic berth. And this year, there will definitely be 2 and as many as 4 teams from outside that top 16 that are like bid stealers on an NCAA basketball selection Sunday, right? Those Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. Everyone's watching. Those bubble teams are watching. Who's going to steal a bid from maybe a mid-major conference that's outside of what would be your expected field? So this year in college hockey, ideally, you need to be top 12, you're safe. Top 13, you feel really good. Top 14, you're a little bit nervous, could use a little bit of help. Anywhere below 14, you're going to be on the outside looking in. So right now, they are the true bubble team, and teams 12, 13, 14, 15, UMass Lowell, Penn State, Quinnipiac, they're all on that. They're really on the bubble. The unique thing about this, Steve, and I know this is where you're going with it, is actually Michigan is 11. And going on the road to Michigan, there's actually a benefit. There's actually a benefit in the pairwise to playing on the road. You can make up more ground than if you win at home. So if they go on the road and win the series, whether it's 2-0 or 2-1, they're in. Whereas if you're playing that series at home, it may not help you as much as it does as winning on the road. Look, they're a bubble team. There's no doubt about that. They have to win at least one. But if they win the series, you feel really good about where they stand. In fact, they could probably jump Michigan without doing all the numbers and trying to figure out what's going on with all the other teams, which will have a slight impact on it as well. But their season's on the line in this series. But they're right on the bubble right now. If it ended today, they'd be in, I think, just depending on who wins those conference tournaments. But there's still too much hockey to play to really know exactly where they would stand if the tournament started today.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Playing at Michigan actually gives them a better opportunity. I mean, it's a better opportunity because if you can win, you'll jump people. Which now brings me to the other part. When you're 14, that is the equivalent of having 2 losses in the college football playoff, what, as you and I always refer to as the opinion pool, right? Yeah. You want to stay out of the opinion pool because then all of a sudden opinions start getting through. Well, what about their strength of schedule? Who'd they play? Where'd they play them? What about the non-conference? Man, you want to take this Michigan thing, get it out of the way, go to the next round, and get yourself in.
Yep, 100%. They control their own destiny. You don't want to go, you go 1-2 and you're sitting at 14 still, then you're waiting to see what the results are of the other conference tournaments, maybe all the way up until what would be the final day of the conference tournament schedule, which is 3 Saturdays from now. So you could, if you go and you have success, you don't have to worry about what happens elsewhere. If you go and you don't have success, then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're just scoreboard watching, which is as painful an experience that you could possibly have this time of year.
I want to get to one of the, quote, older guys on the team, and that's Jimmy Dowd. He missed a series of games this year. He's back now. What has just his presence meant out there to a team that has a mixture of youth and experience?
Well, Penn State, and I know it wasn't always his unit, but they scored a couple of power play goals this weekend against Minnesota, which is something they hadn't done against the Gophers in a couple of years. And to see him come back after missing a month and a half, he missed 12 games, come back and play as the quarterback on their top power play unit is really 1A and 1B, but to get him back for the power play was really impactful. And then to see him come back, Steve, I think everyone always knows Jimmy has a real gift offensively, skating ability, puck-moving ability, but he had some big block shots on Friday and Saturday night. And look, it's not easy after missing a month and a half, and he really wasn't, it was a lower body injury. He wasn't able to skate for much of that month and a half. So to see him come back and play, probably not as many minutes as he's accustomed to, but to see him play valuable minutes and to get him back and to see what he did on both ends of the ice, impact the game, and to get himself back into action, I expect him to take an even bigger stride going into the 3-game series potentially at Michigan this weekend. So I think it's just so big to get him back, and it really solidifies their back end because Simon Mack and Cade Christensen, I think Mack could win Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten, but they've been as good of a pairing as there's been in the Big Ten this season. When Guy put Casey Ahman together with Carter Shade, who were buddies playing youth hockey out in Pittsburgh, and they got reunited unbeknownst to the coaching staff that they had played as defense partners together, and all of a sudden they just clicked, and I think their games went to the next level. And Jared Crespo has simplified his game and gotten back to the type of player that I think everyone thought he could be. Jimmy's kind of added that extra element to get a guy with his experience, his ability back. It just makes him even deeper and stronger for a team that really, as we started this talking about, the evolution has been the depth of their forwards and the contributions they've gotten, and they've gotten it on the back end too with their decor, and getting Jimmy back is a huge help.
Essentially, for the past month, almost 5 weeks, they've been forced to play, I think, playoff hockey because they've had to win their way back into this spot. And they've won their way back to 14 in pairwise. What about the mental aspect of that? Because now they're used to playing this way to get where they need to go. How much of a bonus have the past 4 weeks been because of the mental side of it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's been a huge bonus. It's something we've talked about probably every broadcast for the last month and a half, and something I've talked to Guy and the coaching staff and some of the players about. They've played desperate hockey, and I think this time of year, you can't just flip a switch. All of a sudden the playoffs are here. What are we going to do? They've had that demeanor, and they've had that the last couple of months. And I think playing that way, Steve, not every game in this league is going to go perfect. You're going to hit some adversity. There's going to be bumps in the road. You're playing elite teams night in and night out, teams that have a chance not only to make a deep run in an NCAA tournament, but I think to win the national championship this year, especially Michigan State and Minnesota, and to get 7 points the last 2 weekends against those two teams is really a credit to the team that guy has and the coaching that they've done this year. I just think it's instrumental because you have to be ready to weather that adversity and handle it and find ways to win different games, right? Some games you might need your offense to go, or maybe it's a defensive game, or Arseny Sergeyev is going to steal it for you. And during this stretch, they've won games in so many different ways that I think they're so well equipped for anything that the postseason is going to throw at them. They're used to playing with their backs against the wall because of the run that they had to go on. I just think it's so beneficial to have that experience, especially with so many key guys being underclassmen still. It kind of gives them that that de facto playoff experience, even though they may not have had it during their college careers to this point.
Last time I went to a game, which was, 10 days ago, whatever it was, what I noticed for Penn State was I loved their spacing offensively when they were in the zone. And I like the fact that it looked to me like they had it so bunched they took away spacing from the opponent defensively. Are you saying the same thing?
Yeah, I think you're right on there. I think the biggest, I don't even know if it's changed. I know I used the word evolution before. I think it's a group where their offensive identity hasn't changed, right? They want to score. Mm-hmm. I think they're finding a way to score without, it's still a high volume of shots, but I still think there's been an added emphasis on an increase in quantity plus quality and not just the quantity. And I think that's because of their spacing on their offensive end. I think the creativity that they have helps. But there's no doubt they're at their best when they play fast offensively. And when you're playing fast, you're in transition. You probably have guys on different wings and a guy driving the ice up the middle. But to me, the difference, probably the last few years, I know Giuliano Pagliaro has a lot to do with this. Obviously, Arseny Sergeyev has a lot to do with it this year in stopping pucks. But I think they've just been so much better at not giving stuff up on the defensive end. They don't give up many grade A's against. They don't give up the odd man rushes. And I think they do a great job of keeping the opponents out of the high-danger scoring areas. And to your point, is their spacing, their ability to create and take away on the defensive end. I think that's been so good in the second half, and look, Arseny's played unbelievable. He's had to steal games for him. He's made some huge saves on penalty kills, but to go along with what he's done, they've been really good defensively in front of him. And when I talk about that defense, as you know, you're not just talking about the two defensemen out there. I think it's all five on the ice have made a real commitment to taking stuff away from the opponent. And part of that probably also goes to, Steve, when John Seifarth, the former club hockey goalie, replaced Arseny Sergeyev at the end of November and December, they played a different brand of hockey. And I think that commitment, I think that stretch and they swept Colgate during that stretch. He beat Army, and he played great in that game. Having to go through that experience made them a better team from it. Like so many people have said, well, if they didn't start the year 6-9 overall and 0-8 in conference, I'm like, you know what? You can't just say that, because them going through those stretches, the adversity, the lessons they've learned, I think that's played a huge part in the success that they've had since the calendar's turned to 2025.
Well, my goal is to continue to do things wrong to set the tone you need to be better. So not many people could do it like that. You're the best. Good luck this weekend. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. The great Brian Tripp. We'll wrap it up in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.